Hello and welcome back to Sorare guys. Big day today as the Premier League has now launched, and that could only mean one thing. I can now pick a draft team for English Premier League players, which is what I'm going to be doing today in this video. If you like this video, smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you've not signed up to Sorare yet and you want to draft your own Premier League team of 8 players, use the link in the description below. You'll also get some free cards by using that link as well. It's the best sign up link out there, guys. So do make sure you sign up using that link. It also helps support this content as well going forward. So guys, the big news today is that Sorare have become an official partner of the English Premier League. That means that you can now buy these digital assets of these players on Sorare to enter in the Sorare fantasy leagues and tournaments. There's plenty of beginner tutorials on this channel, guys, if you do want to learn more about Sorare, and I'm going to be highlighting some top 10 players in the Premier League as well coming up in terms of the Sorare scoring. Familiar with Fantasy Premier League? Then this is probably going to be another fantasy sport game that you wanted to be getting involved with. But on this game, the prizes are much bigger with some fantastic rewards, including these digital assets that you can see on screen now. Today though, guys, I'm going to be concentrating on my Premier League draft. So I'm going to be picking my 8 players in the draft today from the English Premiership. If we go down here at the bottom, we can see there's the Premier League Amateur. So this is the Fantasy Premier League game specific to, of course, the English Premier League. So a quick look at the details then of the draft. So draft a team of common cards and compete using players of the best teams in the Premier League. So obviously the competition covered is just the Premier League. Requirements is a common card as the captain, and they will get a 50% bonus on their score in the upcoming game week. We can also see as well the matches here. So these are all the fixtures upcoming. So this will be the next game week on fantasy football as well, the normal Premier League fantasy football, and this is the same sort of games that you're going to be seeing as well on Sorare, because it does follow the real live matches of the English Premier League. The points are also scored from the players as well based on their performance during those games in the Premier League, but it's not just goals and assists that count. They're the big factors in the score. It's also things like passes, shots on target, and plethora of other stats as well to take into consideration when picking your teams. There's a juicy prize pool as well up for grabs, guys. If you manage to finish in the top 3, you're going to be getting some really good players. Top place will get you players like Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland cards to play in tournaments in the future. These cards as well will have a monetary value. Second, you're going to get a tier 1, so that's going to be players like Mohamed Salah, Alisson Becker, Trent Alexander-Arnold, to name just a few. You also got a chance to win some tier 2 limiteds as well for finishing 6th to 50th in this tournament. Some really decent players as well here, including Young Salcido, new signing for Liverpool, Nunes, Anthony from Manchester United in there as well. So some top stars even in the tier 2 bracket. And tier 3 cards are going to be players that are maybe not on form at the moment, but there's still some quality players in here, as you can see here from the prize pool pot. Now if we click on one of these players, you will see that these players have cards on Sorare. So these are the cards that you're going to be winning, and a lot of these cards are worth a lot of money, as you can see here from these current prices. So guys, let's go ahead and draft my team of 8 players by clicking this draft button here. Now something to bear in mind is when you are actually playing in the fantasy tournaments on Sorare, you only actually need a team of 5. So it's a 5-a-side game, so you need 1 goalkeeper, 1 midfielder, 1 defender, 1 forward, and then you get to pick an extra player as well, which is an outfield player, so defender, midfielder or forward. So guys, let's have a look who I'm going to pick then in my team. Now I am a Manchester United supporter, so I am going to try and pick a couple of those players in this team as well, because they have been on form recently. They're getting even better under Ten Hag. But as you can see, you can pick any players that you want really, but you can only pick 2 players from the same team. Another thing to note as well is there's a 400 points cap that you have to spend on these players. So as you can see, the different players have been allocated a different points cap. Now this points cap is based on their last 15 games in terms of their scores on the fantasy game on Sorare. In the last 15 games, on average, Jared Bowen has got 55 points on average in his last 15 games. So this is how this points allocation is worked out, guys, for each player. Now you have to stay under this 400 point cap as well, of course, so that is something to bear in mind. With that in mind, guys, you're looking at about 50 points on average for each player in your team. Sometimes though, A good strategy is to have maybe some bench players that have got a really low points cap, or maybe some under the radar players who have not been on the best of form yet but have still got the quality to maybe score higher in future game weeks. One example could be Gabriel Jesus, who's obviously injured at the moment, but obviously when he comes back I expect him to be firing on all cylinders again for Arsenal. That's going to give you a good remaining points cap for your team of 5, because remember you can only actually enter 5 players in the upcoming game week. Another thing to note as well, guys, when you play these players in the fantasy tournaments on Sorare, they will gain XP, so that's going to grant them a percentage bonus score on the points that they get each game week. Now if you keep that player for the rest of the season, that percentage bonus is obviously going to keep increasing as long as you're playing them in the lineups on the fantasy football game. If you sell that player though and draft him in for another player, you will lose the XP that player has gained, and the new player that you bring in will start with a base XP score. So that is something to bear in mind. And while we're on that subject, you can actually swap 2 players from your team each game week. So you can swap 2 players out for another 2 players. Obviously when you sell that player, you will get the points cap that's allocated to them back into your overall budget to spend on the players that you're bringing in. But the thing to note there is, guys, that you will lose the XP of that player if you do transfer them out. So that is something that I'm going to bear in mind here. I'm really going to be wanting players that I'm going to be sticking with for the full season. As we approach the end of the season, my cards are going to be more powerful because I'm going to have that high XP points, which is going to increase their score each game week. So let's have a look at the forwards first of all then, guys. I'm going to go first of all right to the bottom of the pile. So this is ordered in terms of points that these players have been allocated, and as you can see at the bottom it's the lowest scoring players. So I'm just going to see if there's any standout picks here in terms of forward that are looking really cheap because they've maybe not been playing recently or been playing as a sub but maybe expected to get back in the team. So let's have a look then. Is there any standouts here? Nketiah looks pretty cheap actually, but the only problem is when Gabriel Jesus comes in, I think he's probably going to replace Nketiah. Anthony's not really performing that well for United at the moment. He's looking cheap as well though. Let's see if there's any others. Diego Jota, I think he was injured once. I don't know. I think he's back soon potentially. 21st of February expected back, so he could be a decent one. He's only 40, so there's some pretty decent options really in terms of cheaper forwards here, which is potentially going to just be a backup for now, or you can have them as a starter as well, of course. We've got Richarlison here as well and Jesus, so they're looking fairly good at 45, but if these are going to be a backup I don't really want to go any higher than 45. We've got Martinelli in there as well. There's some decent options. Sancho, he's recently returned to training, see if he can maybe get in the team. Marcus Rashford is only 51 though. Now he's on fire at the moment, as we know, but he's certainly looking decent. Let's have a look. If you click on the player, you can see the recent scores of that player. So when he is getting a goal, he's getting a decent score. The max score on Sorare is 100, so it's capped at 100, so they can't go any higher than 100 points. But some in the 60 range is a good score really, but as you can see when he doesn't score, he's getting a very low score. There's certainly some cheaper looking options there, looking decent. Star players like Mahrez, Kane, Gakpo's a little bit more expensive due to his form at PSV. I don't think he's been on fire for Liverpool, but he has only played a few games so far. So these are a bit more of the expensive players. Haaland's going for 57, which isn't too bad. 56 for Salah. Again, the Haaland's not got the all-round player, but he's obviously scoring plenty of goals that probably makes up for it. So yeah, some juicy options here, but I think the cheaper players are looking decent, like Rashford and maybe Gabriel Jesus, players like that are looking good. So there's some ideas there. Let's just have a quick look at the midfielders then. So the top scoring midfielders are people like Fernandes. He's a fantastic player on the Sorare scoring matrix. Maddison is a decent option as well. Kevin De Bruyne, of course. Almiron's been on fantastic form. Some familiar faces here. Casemiro's doing well as well. Saka, so some really good options there. But let's just go to the bottom of the pile again just to see what cheaper option we've got available. So here we are then at the bottom of the pile. Let's see what players we've got here. See if there's any players that are standing out that could potentially improve on their form. There's no obvious choices so far. Let's have a look. Van der Beek, he just didn't seem to be getting any game time at all at United. McTominay and Fred have been dropped finally, which is good. Who else have we got here? Shelby, don't want him, he's just going to be fouling everyone. What else have we got? There's a few. Well, there's not a lot of options really, is there? In terms of decent players here in the lower cap for the midfielders. No, none are sticking out. So the forwards, in terms of cheaper options, is looking a lot better than the midfielders at this moment in time. Let's have a quick see what else. We've got Bernardo Silva here, 42. That's not bad. Mason Mount on 43. They're two potentially good players there. Although neither of them have been on good form recently, which probably explains the low points cap there. Let's see who else we've got here. Phil Foden could be a decent one potentially for 45. But then picking Man City players, you do have to deal with Pep Roulette, of course. Ziyech has been getting some game time recently for Chelsea, potentially. Partey could be a good option. But some of these are getting a bit more expensive now. So Jack Grealish there didn't always play every game though. So again, it's the Pep Roulette. So yeah, decent options there in midfield. Eriksen is potentially a good one. He's injured though currently, I believe. Odegaard's obviously a decent one, 59. And then we're going to the top players again here. So yeah. So, I think I'm going to start with the midfielders and forwards then. So what I'm going to generally try to do here, you could only pick 2 from each team, don't forget. I'm going to try and have a stack of 2 attacking players from the same team to go in my starting 5. So, say a midfielder from Man City and a forward from Man City. And then I'm going to pick a defensive stack as well from another team, and then in the final slot in my team of 5, I'm going to look to pick a player who's a star man potentially, a star player like Kevin De Bruyne, Bruno Fernandes, someone like that. So, in terms of the midfielder then, now Bruno Fernandes is very, very tempting. He seems to play every single game for United as well. He is coming at a big cost though. That is the only downside of Bruno Fernandes. Kevin De Bruyne is another obvious choice, but he's obviously going to be potentially rotated by Guardiola as well, so that is a risk with that one. James Maddison's decent for Leicester, but I don't want to pay that much really for a Leicester midfielder. Let's have a look at what else we've got here. We've got Saka, which could be a good one, especially if I go with Gabriel Jesus in the forward slot, so that could be a nice little stack for Arsenal there. Odegaard is also looking good. He's 59 average, and I would say is probably a better player on Sorare than Saka in general. Eriksen is another good option as well. He's decent on the scoring matrix on Sorare. So some really good options sticking out here. Let's just go back to the forwards again. So the star forwards, you're talking Harry Kane. Who else have we got? Haaland as well. He's obviously a decent one. Harry Kane's good though. He's banging in the goals as well. Salah could improve his form potentially, but I think it's the cheap players that I like in terms of the forwards here. So I think Gabriel Jesus is probably an obvious choice as a really cheap player potentially, 45. There were some other cheap players as well, weren't they, in the 40 category. Just have a look where they are. Who could return to the Liverpool team soon. Anthony as well could be a bit of a dark horse if he can improve his form. And Nketiah is another decent option. Now you could potentially have Nketiah and Gabriel Jesus and rotate them depending on who's predicted to play. I think Jesus is probably an obvious choice though, because he should come back and do pretty well for Arsenal. And you would think he'd get back into the team as well, so he could be a decent shout. Now, the standout players that I'd probably want in this team in terms of forwards would probably be someone like Kane. Mahrez would probably suffer from the Pep Roulette, and Haaland potentially as well. And of course Marcus Rashford is looking cheap, and maybe even Song Min as well. But I think what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to go with Rashford. I'm also going to select Gabriel Jesus as well, so that's my 2 forwards there. Now in terms of midfielders, Odegaard could be a decent option to link up with Gabriel Jesus. Fernandes as well could be a really decent option, especially with me being a United fan as well. Now, I've not looked at the fixtures for the upcoming game week, but like I say, I'm generally going to try and keep the same team throughout the rest of this season. When the season does finish, your team does reset as well, so that is something to bear in mind. So in this case here, I think I am going to actually go with Odegaard. Now, I am spending a lot here, I have to bear that in mind. And also Bruno Fernandes. Now this is leaving me 173 for 4 players, so 2 defenders and 2 goalkeepers. So that's not leaving me much wiggle room really, so I'm going to have to go with 2 really cheap players here. So I'm going to have a 40 points cap player in my defender and a goalkeeper as well, and then see what points I've got left available after that. Because on average it's going to be 43 per player, so I do need to bring that points cap down. So let's see what we've got here then. We've got Paul Drummond for Newcastle, he might be an option. Got a few Crystal Palace players. There's none sticking out that are actually going to be getting game time. Nico Williams potentially, but obviously he's not playing for the best team. Who else have we got here? Romero there for Tottenham. Now obviously I won't be able to pick any more Man United players or Arsenal players now in these teams. Now, Ruben Diaz looks a potentially good option. Or even Cancelo. Cancelo's 40. Well, that is very, very surprising. Now, he has been on the bench recently though, Cancelo, but when he is playing, on Sorare is a fantastic player to have. Because he does score really well on Sorare when he does play. So 40 is looking really promising, especially if he can get back in the team. So I think Cancelo is looking really appealing here. So I'm actually going to pick Cancelo for 40. That looks really cheap. Now at the moment it's going to be just a backup option, but if he does get back into the team, he's going to be scoring really well for my side. Now I'm just going to go over to the goalkeepers and I'm going to pick a goalkeeper who's got 40 points as well, just to see what points that gives me, what points I'll have remaining. So let's just say I'll go with Sam Johnson. I'm going to pick him, of course. I'm just going to see how many points that leaves me. So that's leaving me an average of 46 for each player. Now that's probably not going to be enough to get a decent player here, but let's see what we can do. So Edison is only 48, which is interesting. Especially if Cancelo can get back in the side. Apart from that, Hugo Lloris, not bad if Tottenham can improve their form. Now, this is interesting. So I think Edison is probably looking decent, especially if Cancelo does get back in the side. We're going to have a really solid Man City stack there in defence. I'm going to go and put in Edison there. So I've got 45 for a defender now. Now this needs to be a starting defender that I'm going to be playing most weeks. Now the good thing about this draft, guys, as well, is if you change your mind once you've confirmed your draft, you can redraft your team. As long as you redraft it before the deadline, you can, of course, change your mind and pick someone else in your team. You can really pick your full team, basically. So we've got Malassi here, who's recently got back into the Man City side, does seem to be playing a lot of the games. Let's have a look. Rico Lewis has been playing for Man City, but of course I won't be able to pick him because I've already got 2 Man City players. Now, as you can see, I am struggling here for points. Now, there's Kyle Walker, but again, it's the Man City thing. I've already got 2 of those players. So it's looking a bit scarce here, guys, in terms of who I can pick. Aspilicueta, is he playing for Chelsea? Has he been getting game time? He has, hasn't he? But he's not really been playing that consistently. So it's a bit of a tricky one, this. So I might need to rethink my strategy here. I think I'm happy with Edison, though. He looks cheap for the goalie. So I'm happy with Edison in goal. In terms of the sub-goalie, I'm still going to pick a cheap option here. I'm just going to probably go with a better option than what I've currently got though. Well, this guy could be decent for Wolves. I know they're not playing brilliant, but at least he's playing. At least he's starting games. He could have the odd game where they've got an easy fixture. So I might actually go with this guy as my extra goalkeeper option. So I don't think I'll be picking any more Wolves players. That's for sure. Now, in terms of the rest of the team then. Now, I like Gabriel Jesus there as the backup option. I think he's looking cheap. And I also like Odegaard as well there as my midfield option. I think Bruno Fernandes is probably the guy that's tipping it over the edge a little bit because he is expensive at the moment. Happy with Cancelo for 40 points for that budget, for that backup defender. Now, I do need another defender though in this slot here really. Trippier is the best scoring defender as you can see. But I think I'm going to have to reduce the budget in terms of my forwards and midfielders here though. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the forward slot here for Rashford. Just to see what other options there was below Rashford. So it was 51 points. There's no real standout options here. So it's very limited in terms of forwards. We've got Martinelli there though. He could be an option potentially. I think I would prefer to go with Rashford being a United fan. And let's just have a look at the midfield options again. Just to see if there's any other better options there in midfield that are cheaper than Odegaard. So Ericsson, but then of course I've got Rashford there. Jorginho could be a good one. Does he still take penalties? A little bit more expensive than Odegaard though actually. They would need to reduce the cost here you see of this midfielder so that I can get a decent defender. Jack Grealish, but then I've got 2 Man City players already. Ziyech could be a good one. He's been playing recently as well for Chelsea. Although I don't know if he's going to be staying in the team, in all honesty. Let's see who else we've got then. Phil Foden, but again, I've got the Man City defence. I might actually get rid of those defenders, you know. Might get rid of the Man City defence. There's a lot of cheap Man City players coming up. Bernardo Silva is another one. Been on rubbish form recently, but he could improve. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to get rid of Bruno Fernandes here. As much as it pains me to do so, 72 seems a bit of a steep price. Ericsson looks decent at 58. But he's playing a more defensive role nowadays, isn't he, for Manchester United? So I don't think it's going to be blown us away with his scores. Jack Grealish is not really a regular starter for Man City. So it's pretty slim pickings in terms of midfielders, isn't it? Now, I think what I'm going to have to do here, I don't really want to sacrifice Fernandes because I think he's a fantastic choice. Odegaard is looking cheap as well, so I'm going to have to get rid of Gabriel Jesus here. He's looking really cheap, but I think that 5 extra points is going to make a big difference in terms of getting a decent defender. So let's just have a look at these cheap forwards again. So I want someone cheap. Ideally was 40 points. Now Nketiah is a decent option, you know. I think he could be a decent option. Yes, Gabriel Jesus is coming back. But will Nketiah still get some game time? Because he's been on absolute fire. It's going to take Jesus a while to get back to fitness as well. And for 40 points, I think he's probably looking the best of the bunch here in terms of value. Jota is another option as well for Liverpool. He's only 40. But he's obviously been out injured a long time. And he wasn't a regular before he was injured, to be honest, for Liverpool. So I'm going to go with Nketiah here. I think that makes sense. He's obviously in the team at the moment as well. So we've got 2 Arsenal players, 2 Man United players. I like that. I've got a cheap Man City defender here who could be a star man potentially. But what I want to do here, just in case Cancelo doesn't get starting minutes, is potentially replace Edison for a different goalkeeper. But let's just have a look what defenders I can afford now. So I've now got a £50 budget to spend after getting rid of Gabriel Jesus. So we've got Faze for Leicester. We've got Johnny Evans. Varane for Man United. Obviously I can't have him though because I've got 2 Man U players already. Reece James, another one. But he's not expected to start, I don't think, this upcoming game week. Still injured, so I don't want him really. I want somebody who's going to be starting. Lisandro Martinez is 46. Now that's interesting, but obviously I've already got a forward for Man United and a midfielder, which sort of scuppers that idea, but he would be probably a good option. Now, as I say, whoever I pick here, I'm really going to be picking a goalkeeper as well for that team, ideally. No, there's no other standout options here. Sandro Martinez would have been decent. Or even Varane, he would have been a decent option as well. Only got 50 points to spend. Now, what about this Chelsea defender here? He's been starting recently and he's been doing really well as well for Chelsea. So this could be a good option here, guys. So I'm going to click him. I'm going to select him. Now, ideally, I want a goalkeeper for Chelsea as well. So how much is the starting goalkeeper for Chelsea? It's Kepa, isn't it? Is there 63? No chance of that then, is there? So I'm just going to stick with Edison, I think. Edison as my goalkeeper. He never gets dropped by Pep. He's always playing. And he's looking cheap as well, actually. So I'm going to go with Edison when I can find him. So yeah, I'm going to stick with Edison there in goal. So I think that's it, guys. I'm going to stick with that. Did want a defensive stack ideally, but I do have that with Cancelo and Edison if Cancelo does get back into the Man City side. So I'm going to go ahead now, guys, and confirm that draft. Like I say, I can change this if I do want to before the next game week starts. I can always change this team. So in terms of the goalkeeper then, I'm going to go with Edison. Now they've not got the easiest fixture. It's against Tottenham away, but you never know, they could get a clean sheet. I'm going to go with him. Now Badiashile is probably a good player in defence there. Cancelo is not likely to start this one, so I'm going to go with him as my defender. Midfielder makes total sense here to go with Bruno Fernandes at home to Crystal Palace. Marcus Rashford as well is another one that's an obvious pick. And then I've got a choice between Odegaard and Nketiah for Arsenal. And they're away to Everton. But I'm going to actually go with Odegaard here because I think he's a decent player on Sorare in terms of his scores on Sorare. So I'm going to go with him in that final slot. So this is my team of 5 guys for the first ever game week on Sorare Fantasy Football in the English Premier League. Captain-wise, I'm going to go with Bruno Fernandes. Now don't forget that the captain does get a 50% bonus on their score in the upcoming game week. So I'm going to pick him. Make sure you pick a captain very wisely, guys. As I say, they will get a 50% boost on their overall score in that game week. So Captain Fernandes, I think that team is looking really solid. I'm going to go ahead and confirm that. Now the game week starts for this one on the 3rd of February, guys. The 3rd of February is when this game week starts, so make sure you do get your team in before then. This is the team, look, it's saved now as you can see, and the game week will run between the 3rd of Feb and the 7th of Feb. Okay, so this is my completed team. Now, as I say, you can redraft your team if you did wish to do so once you've picked that, so don't worry if you've picked your team and you want to make some changes. And as I say as well, going forward after this game week, you will be able to swap 2 cards if you just wish to do that, to transfer 2 players out and put 2 players in. You will lose the XP points of those players though if you did do that, of course. That's potentially going to affect your player card's power further on in the season. Okay guys, that was it then. So this is my team for the first ever English Premier League Fantasy Football Tournament on Sorare. If you like this video, smash the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you're not signed up to Sorare yet, sign up using the link below. It's the best link out there guys. Other affiliates have this link as well of course. I'd appreciate it if you do use mine, so obviously it helps support this content going forward. You can also check out my Patreon as well for regular scouting on there, and check out sorareassist.com for more free Sorare content. Okay guys, thanks for watching as always, and I'll see you again soon.